this video, I'm going to be telling you 7 retro racing video games that you need to buy going into 2020. So last week I talked about, it was in my video response to Metal Jesus Rocks, about PlayStation games that I still play in 2019 PS2. And today, like I said, we have 7 fantastic retro racing games to get your teeth stuck into. My first pick, and this is in no particular order, is going to be Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. If ever there's been a need for some juicy couch co-op for me, it is well within the limits of the kart racing of Super Mario Kart, particularly on Balloon Battle. By today's standards, this game still gives me goosebumps, it still gives me adrenaline, and it definitely adds a lot of tricky challenges, especially on the beach track, which I've always struggled with, and then again on like the ice tracks as well, trying to dodge those tricky ice blocks and navigate through them or hit them to just make them dissolve. It has everything for me. 50cc, 100cc, and 150cc. I loved every single minute of it, and I particularly enjoyed the couch co-op with my friends on track 4 of Balloon Battle. There are only 4 tracks if you're playing on your Balloon Battle, and obviously the aim of the game is to pop the balloons. You have 3 of them. You have to utilise your green shells, your red shells, and all the different power-ups that you get in the Grand Prix of Super Mario Kart. I'm often asked, what is your favourite retro game ever? And I deliver the same answer every time. Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. It was the first Mario Kart game, and it certainly set a very high benchmark for future games, and boy has that series been consistent. I mean, recently I was enjoying some Super Mario Kart on the Switch and still feeling that buzz that I got back on the Super Nintendo. But nothing will ever beat Super Mario Kart. It is a classic racing game within the retro gaming world, and it is a must. What do you think? Next up then is a Mega Drive title that kept me gripped for absolutely years. Micro Machines 2 Turbo Tournament. This is a top-down racing game, and you're racing against opponents, but you're kind of having to dodge whatever's in front of you as well. Like, you could be on a snooker table and you're having to dodge snooker balls and pockets. And let's not forget falling off the side. A good tactic in Micro Machines Turbo Tournament is to get ahead as far as possible, so that if you do tumble or you do bang into something, it's okay because your opponents won't take over you. Now, I remember playing this with my friend Daniel. We used to spend hours and hours playing we'd like literally sit in the same chair. He had this huge computer chair and we'd sit in the same seat. And his mum used to bring up ham sandwiches whilst we were glued to this amazing game of Micro Machines. It was also the first game which, like in the Micro Machines 2 Turbo Tournament, also allowed you to play with 3 other friends, totaling 4 players. And this was a huge deal back in the day, because as with the Sega Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, before that NES and Master System, we just had a console that allowed for 2 players. But this cartridge had the 2 additional controller ports within the cartridge itself, and it just opened up a myriad of possibilities. It's fun, it's furious, and it definitely is tricky, so make sure you've not added any drinks when you play this, guys. Micro Machines Turbo Tournament. Sorry, Micro Machines 2 Turbo Tournament. Okay, this blew me away back in 1995. Wipeout. It was also released on the Sega Saturn, but I'm most familiar with this game on the PlayStation 1, and I will say this. It looks great by today's standards. Gone half the blocky, polygonal, horrible, graphic styles that some PlayStation racers has. This looks really, really smooth, and it plays really, really well. And I just loved that feeling. One of my favourite things about Wipeout is when you take a jump and you just seem to float forever, and you kind of come back down on the track and you're trying to kind of make sure you don't crash, and you've got a nice cushy landing. Pilot wing skills there, coming back onto the track so you can just continue kicking some ass with your friends. The soundtrack is phenomenal. actual artists as well, you know, artists we know like Chemical Brothers, I think, did a couple of tracks of Wipeout. It really is an awesome game. Unfortunately, Wipeout wasn't massively consistent as a series, but it definitely holds up as an immense original game today. Please let me know some of your favourite memories of playing Wipeout. It's just a great game, and it was one of those games that you first looked at graphically back in the day and were like, wow, this is so futuristic. Another PS1 title then, and you've just heard me refer to those blocky polygons. I'm going to talk about Ridge Racer, which doesn't look as polished as what Wipeout does in terms of its graphics, but it's not supposed to because it has that arcade vibe, which means that the colour palette is a lot more popping, the music is a lot more thuddy and thumping and racy and bassy and kind of house trance, whatever you want to call it. It really is a wicked experience. And when you get that loading screen on the beginning where you kind of just playing Space Invaders, waiting for things to load in, and at first you were like, wait, what? This is supposed to be a racing game, not Space Invaders. But it soon loads in, you pick your car and away you go. Wow, did that game keep me entertained for so many years. I think we played it for like 3 years solid. And for some reason back then, it never used to feel old. And then of course we got some decent Ridge Racer games after that. We got Revolution, we got Rage Racer, we got lots of different installments, but nothing like Rotterdam Nation was my favourite track. Let's just get that down right now. So Rotterdam Nation I would have on repeat, and I would just race and race and race, and then you unlocked the yellow car, and I just felt like $1 million every time I played that game. It isn't that great by today's standards in terms of its manoeuvrability and its mechanics, but definitely going into 2020, Ridge Racer is a game that we all need to continue to play to keep those nostalgic PS1 racing vibes alive. Next up then is a nice Nintendo 64 game with Beetle Adventure Racing, playing up to 4 players as like many of the racing games back on the Nintendo 64. Beetle Adventure Racing is a really fun game to play, and again looks fantastic by today's standards. My favourite, I was going to say level, but my favourite track is the one which is kind of have a bit of a jungle theme and a dinosaur kind of coming in. You know, it's really fun to play, and there's this one level as well which reminds me of many James Bond films when you're kind of racing through really narrow streets, almost like a Spanish looking kind of race, and it's just an absolute ton of fun. It's definitely not a racing game that relies on the music, say as much as like Ridge Racer. It really does take massive emphasis on playing the game, learning the corners, learning the drift, you know, getting a feel for the physics of the car and just enjoying for it. And once you've got that nailed down, you can really do well on Beetle Adventure Racing. If you haven't played it, I would highly recommend you sourcing a copy. You can find one box complete for about £18, which is what I think I paid about 4 years ago. But even if you don't find it that cheap, I would definitely pay up to like 28 quid for it. So definitely go and check it out. Beetle Adventure Racing is one that you definitely need to score. Next up then is an arcade game that kept me and my friends glued to the screen. Best of 3 wins, and often I did win on Sega Rally. Used to beat my friend Andy up in Morecambe, and that was on the 2-player machine, so we had a ton of fun on Sega Rally, and of course with the Sega Saturn we were able to enjoy it at home as well. For me, I actually enjoyed it more on the arcade, but it became more and more difficult to find as the years went on. I actually think that they removed that 2-seater arcade racer from the arcades we went to back in the day. So I was left with only like the Sega Saturn to play it on, and that's what I've done over the past couple of years with my trusty Sega Saturn steering wheel, which is just behind me here. And again, it's not the best looking game. There's a lot of screen tear, there's a lot of kind of polygons that tends to pop in and out of place, but it's fun, it's fast, it's furious, and it's one of those games again that you need to be heavily skilled on. And I just for some reason, every time I see like Sega Rally on a magazine or Sega Rally on somebody's stall at a retro gaming market, it just reminds me of how much fun I've had. And I think out of the entire list of games I'm serving up here. This for me is a title that I've had the most fun on. So please share some of your memories playing Sega Rally, whether it's at the arcade with friends or it's enjoying it at home on your Sega Saturn. You're definitely guaranteed to have some fun. My seventh and final title that I want to discuss is Porsche Challenge on the PlayStation 1. A title that is very common, but is very underrated and not a lot of people talk about it. The tracks are very varied. There's a mirror mode as well, which I really liked. There's lots of different characters that go with different colours of their own car. So there's like a pink Porsche and like a really girly driver. You know, there's a yellow Porsche and like this really cool driver. You know, the drivers' personalities tend to fit the colour of the cars they're in, and I thought that was a nice little quirk, although it didn't make a massive difference to the gameplay whatsoever. Obviously with me, I either like the yellow and the pink because they're my favourite colours, but my brother and I used to play this for days and days, and I have some fun memories from Christmas. I think it was at Christmas 97, when that Porsche Challenge was one of the games that he got. So not only is it nostalgic for me, I still love it today. Feels fast, like the majority of these games, that there's a common theme here. They're all super fast-paced gameplay, and it really taps into that high energy aspect of me, as with all races really. But it's just fun, and I think like the tracks are really well designed. Like there's some tracks that you go into corners and you take the corners and then the roads dip a little bit and they kind of S-bend out. Tricky, definitely tricky, and there's lots of variations of settings. Like there's night cycles, there's day cycles, different parts of the track open up, so you kind of start on a really basic track, but the more you progress, different ways to go open up, and then after you've beat it, you obviously get mirror mode as well. So there's lots of variation within this, and I think it's one definitely not to be missed. You need to check it out. I've mentioned it in my channel before, and surprisingly some people hadn't heard of it. So Porsche Challenge is my final game. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. So they are my 7 retro racing games that you need to play going into 2020. If you think you can add any, I'm pretty sure you can. We have a plethora of racing games to choose from. Smash a comment below or chuck us a tweet out and let me know what you think. If you're new here, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, guys. I'll be back with more content on Friday. Have a great day. My name is Gemma. Take care. See you soon.